Hey guys, it's Pepper. Today we have some pretty heavy topics that we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about sexual abuse and sexual abuse in the church. And if you feel like you can't join us today, that's okay. Come to our next episode. If you are going to join us, I just ask that you take a minute and regulate your nervous system. Take a big deep breath in and let it out. Relax your shoulders.
Our guest has an amazing story with some really strong political opinions. We want to make sure that you are invited into listening to her story, free from distraction with an open mind. We want to make sure that you're aware that we at Color Commentary open our doors to many different types of people with different types of stories. We don't endorse any political party or any political candidate. And so don't let that be a distraction for you as you listen to her story and where she arrives. I hope you enjoy the show. It's an amazing show. Take notes, and we love to hear about them. All right, let's get to it.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Colored Commentary, colorful conversations by colorful people about Christianity, culture, and race. I'm your host, Markus, Lloyd, and of course, in the studio with me is Mr. Antwuan Malone.
What's up? What's up? What's up? What's up, everybody? Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
I'm glad you're here.
Yes.
I'm glad
are you just welcoming them, or are you welcoming me too? Is it
we're welcoming them?
Well, that's fair.
Together.
I like that. I like a little collaboration.
That's
good.
What we're doing
That's good.
Right
How you feeling today?
I'm good. I'm good.
Your energy up. You've got you.
Energy is
you had all
getting up.
Your stuff. Your sugar.
I did not have any sugar.
You got the sugar.
I hope I don't have that sugar.
The sugar.
Yeah, I might have that sugar. It very may well be true.
That's all right. That's fair.
I am good. Yeah, I'm excited for this show. I think it'll be really, really cool.
Yeah, I'm excited too. What I like.
What we're going to talk about today.
What I like is this. That wasn't necessarily something that we were going to do. We're doing the series, Christianity in the Public Square, and we have all the episodes kind of marked out, and then you came with like, hey, have you thought about this person? Actually, this has happened a lot. There's a lot of people, once we started this show, they've been like, you need to talk to so-and-so, you need to talk to so-and-so, talk to so-and-so. Yeah, so I feel like there's going to be like, do we need to do like a part 2 or just keep extending?
Let's see if we can get her back.
Yeah. It's good. And I'm here, of course, again, sporting a little bit of a thread.
Repping. On my way over, I realized. I came from work and I realized I didn't bring it. You just want to come
in looking fly.
I need to like keep it at the office.
Just keep a shirt at the office.
Keep a threaded. Yeah.
Keep multiple items at the office so that you can variety.
Just so I can just switch it up.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So if you like the shirt, right, and you like we've done this before, you can go to wearethreaded.org/shop. There are lots of items in there. There's even a gift card in there for people if they want to give it a gift or something, right? Yeah. And all the proceeds of what you do with these shirts and pay for stuff, it goes to our organization Threaded, which is the organization that powers this podcast.
Yes.
Right, helping build relationships, reconciliation, and collaborative action with the diverse body of Christ. I've been wanting to. Let me get your thoughts.
What have you been wanting to do?
Let me get your thoughts on this. And actually, we've got some. I just want to give a shout out to Schmevin is in the house today, engineer in his lair, his Megamind lair. Good to see you, Schmevin. Good to have you here. And we have we brought back Chino. Chino came in.
She is back.
Yeah, she's back in here. How you feeling today?
Good.
Chino, good. Okay, we're gonna bring you in on our say what. So glad you're here. I just want to give shout outs. Here's something I was thinking about.
Okay,
you can tell me what you think about this.
All right.
People ask me, okay, so what does Threaded do? Here's what and it gets complicated, right? It's complex.
What does Threaded do?
Exactly. So what I want is people read the headlines, as you always say, but don't paragraphs, right? So and what they want to make sure is that when you tell them the headline, that you got the paragraphs, but they don't want to hear the paragraphs.
They don't actually want to read the paragraphs.
They don't read paragraphs. They'd rather have a headline that then they can investigate.
Yes, we've been through
it, right? So here's what I was thinking. What I was thinking, this isn't funny. This is real. Like, what if we just say that we fix the racial divide?
That we fix
it. We fix it.
That's a big promise.
Exactly. So just keep asking me about it.
That's a big promise.
Look, people need some stuff to click on. They're like, okay, I need to hear this, right? And then you go into, by helping people understand more about the racial conversation, by helping build relationships, people cross-culturally, and then bringing those people together to actually partner together to engage in the work of bringing restoration to the communities that have been ransacked by the history of racial oppression. And that's our strategy right there. That's that ripe strategy told out.
Yeah.
All those things. We found the foundational motivation is a faith-rooted motivation. We believe that the church, the Bible, Jesus, the gospel is the motivator to make all that happen. I don't know. I'm thinking.
You working on it?
I'm working it. It's in the.
It's in the lab.
It's in the lab. It's in the
lab. As we always say.
I like how you included the universal church answer of Church Bible Jesus.
Yes, I had to get
Church Bible.
And I had to. I went all the way to the gospel. I just wanted to make sure I got all the pieces in
because somebody's going to say, "Yeah, but."
Okay, that's good.
You did
mention the Holy Spirit and the Holy Spirit.
The Spirit's in there.
The Holy Spirit is in there.
Spirit led
as well. No,
and
you don't
discipleship.
You don't seem. You're nonplussed.
Big part of the.
You're nonplussed by my thoughts so far. Don't get into it. I just wanted to throw it out, and I wanted to let people.
Why did my exhale trigger you?
Did you hear the exhale? Did nobody else hear this exhale? This is the quintessential thing that somebody does when they're not in on it.
I was just breathing.
No,
I was just on a natural intake and exhale.
Look, I've known you for like 18 years. I can read an exhale in the midst of all that. That's okay. I tell you what.
I like it kind of.
You want a suggestion, Chino?
Yeah, just with your word fix.
No.
Oh.
See?
No, sorry, go for it.
She and I are thinking the same thing.
Yeah, go for it.
I don't know.
As if it can never be fixed.
Well, it is. I see where you're going with it.
Yeah.
And if we're gonna go for that, like grab your attention, what about mend? Because tapestries.
Oh, you like
mend.
it? She's communications, so she's thinking branding right now. She's working branding. What about if you weave the
we weaved back together,
mend. Racial divide.
So no, just joking.
Yeah, I don't know if people like mend.
Fix is the. I mean, to me, fix is just yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what.
It's a big promise.
I'm just dropping it in, and we'll see how
do you fix it?
I just told him.
I don't disagree with you.
I just told him how we did it.
Okay, you did it. All right, we can move it on.
All right, Color Commentary, I just need to let you in on something that you need to know about, all right? And it is MD, right? Medical Aesthetics in downtown McKinney. Fine folks, highly trained in the art of facial restoration and preservation. And it's led by my good friend, Dr. Jeffrey Barstad, right? And no, this isn't plastic surgery. Don't get it wrong, right? This incredibly kind and gentle provider team offers same-day, low downtime, minimally invasive treatments designed to restore, preserve, and beautify what God has already given you, right? Now, it can be from erasing fine lines to treating aggressive signs of aging, from simple skin care to comprehensive treatment plans. I'm telling you, Dr. B, my buddy, and his expert team will guide you through the entire process. So you need to go and check them out for sure, right? This space itself is designed and effective with its creative beauty, so you got to check it out. So just stop by, check out BoMD, right? Say hello and tell them when you're booking your first treatment that Colored Commentary sent you, and you'll get a 15% discount on your first treatment. That's right, 15% discount. You gotta go and check this out, right? Take care of yourself and all the beautiful canvas that God has given you, and check them out at BoMD.com. That is BeauxMD.com. Check them out, BoMD. Okay, hey, so you know we have this segment called Say what? Say what? Yeah, that's exactly right. We ain't doing that segment today. Not doing it. Kylie, today. I know you're here. Chino, you're here for it. I love having you.
She was here and waiting with bated breath.
That's right. And the audience wanted to hear whatever the say what is, because they know that a say what is going to it just makes your brain go crazy. Here's the reason why we're not doing a say what.
Okay.
This guest that we're bringing in here, the book that she has written is basically multiple say whats.
It's a big say what.
It's just a big say what.
In and of itself.
That's right. Yeah. We don't need an extra. You will be, listen, I'm telling you, listener, as you listen to what we talk about with this guest, you will be saying multiple times, say what? So I'm going to just give you just a little intro of this guest. All right. This is wonderful. Right. I'm thrilled. We have she is a powerhouse of storytelling and cultural insight. She is known for her incredible ability to bring the stories of public figures to life through ghostwriting. And she's a collaborator on lots of different things and on books with a diverse lineup, including like Ben Sass, Bristol Palin, Alice Marie Johnson. From political commentary in the Washington Post to her impact and impactful investigative work uncovering the abuse at a Christian camp that I'm very familiar with. Our guest is not afraid to tackle the tough topics. In her latest book, or one of her books, Ghosted, An American Story, I mean, we have a riveting look inside a life of poverty, success, and the inner circles of political influence from the foothills of Appalachia all the way to the White House. Hallelujah. Yes, sir. So, telling you, color commentary, grab your seats, get your popcorn, get your headphones ready for this lively conversation with the brilliant Nancy French. How you doing, Nancy? Good to have you in here.
I'm much better now that you're calling me brilliant.
Look, here's what I'm going to say is I do my best to when we bring folks on the show to read or listen to their book. I want to get all the pieces right. And I'm telling you right now, like I was not ready. I didn't know if I needed all kinds of disclaimers at the front of this thing. I was triggered all the way through it.
You're like, what?
I was
what?
And it was all kinds of triggering. Like I was laughing. Like I was like if I had a drink in my hand, like this color commentary mug, if I had a drink in my hand, I would have spit water like over my kids or my car. I found myself literally countless times watching myself from the outside and realizing my mouth was just dropped open. Like, are you serious right now?
Yeah.
And even because of some stuff with if we get to it, we'll get to it. There was the chapter on this camp that you exposed. I was tearing up. I was tears running down my face because it was just such a connectedness. Your story and all you're doing, this memoir is just so much. So look, we could do 8 podcasts with you. And right now we're in the midst of this cultural conversation around Christianity in the public square and the political times and all that stuff. And so we'll probably jump into some of that. But just to kind of get folks locked up with you, like where are you calling from right now? Where are you at right now?
So I live in Franklin, Tennessee, which is a suburb of Nashville. It's where all the country musicians go to retire, basically. Are you
a country musician? Is that not? I didn't hear that in the memoir. Is that something new? That's
No, I don't even listen to it. It's just where I live.
I love it. Well, I'm glad you're in that space. I know that's a connection to some of your story as well. I'm curious, right? Like I introduced you in some ways as this ghostwriter, but I know there's more.
Did you ever say the name of the book though?
I did. I said Ghosted, An American Story.
All right,
you were so enthralled by the intro.
I just want to make sure that the people got it.
Okay, I'll say it again. Ghosted, An American Story.
Ghosted, An American Story by Nancy French.
Not ghost stories, but just Ghosted. Right.
Oh my gosh, we should do a ghost stories book. That'd be fun.
See the sequel.
That's right. Ghost stories by the ghosted author, an American ghost story.
Yeah,
right.
All of that.
Well, I'm telling you, these ghosts came out of the closet in some of these books. Some of this stuff you had in this book right here. Right? It's a ghost. It's skeletons. Is what it is.
But that's okay.
Right. I'll take
we was gonna let you have it.
You gonna let it? It's the spirit version of the skeleton coming out of the closet. Is what it became.
That's right.
Hey, so tell us a little bit about like when people hear about you and what we said so far. I'm curious, how would you describe what you do right now? Like what does a day in the life of Nancy French look like right now?
Well, about in November of 2023, I was diagnosed with cancer.
Yes.
So I canceled all of my events, all of my gigs. And now I'm doing the things that I want to do. I might not even ghostwrite anymore. I really love ghostwriting, but I love investigative journalism too. So I'm currently doing a project that you'll love to hear about later when it's done.
Yes.
But I'm doing investigative journalism. I am storytelling. I'm just having fun.
I love it. And now I know as far as investigative journalism and all of that good stuff and the storytelling, I think people can connect to some of that stuff. This concept of a ghostwriter, like how do you describe that? Like what does that mean?
Yeah. So, and first I should say that I'm cancer free. So this is a year later, and
fantastic.
That's great
news. Word. I had seen an interview that I saw that. I was excited to see that you had gotten through the cancer. That's a big thing. As somebody who is a son of a cancer survivor, it's always wonderful to hear the stories of engaging with that. So congratulations.
Yeah. So a ghost. So most people don't realize that 99.9% of celebrity books are written by people like me, people that you don't know, that you'll probably never meet. And some books, like, for example, Barack Obama, I think he actually wrote his books. Hillary Clinton pretended to write her books, but she had a ghostwriter, multiple ghostwriters, from what I understand. But most celebrities don't have time to write their books because they're famous for other things. They're not famous writers. They might be a governor or an Olympic athlete or a reality TV show host or whatever. And so if they have a book deal, I move in and sit with them and help them create their books.
My goodness. How long does that process last? Because I know I read a story where you were with Bristol Palin and writing hers, and it was a surprise to you how quickly they needed the book written. So how long does that usually take for you from a ghostwriting standpoint?
Well, normal ghostwriters take like 8 months to a year to do a book. I've had one New York Times bestseller that I wrote in 24 days. Ooh. I'm super fast.
Ooh, my goodness.
24 days.
So what you're saying is I need to get her to this book I've been trying to write. I just need to call her and be like, hey, let's just get this.
Let's knock it out.
You got 5 minutes. We can do it.
Before she gets off the call today.
I know. Just,
have your book written.
Just get all the stuff in. She only needs 5 minutes so she can go. That's amazing.
That's good.
I love it. Okay, so obviously you've been a ghostwriter. How did you get into that space? Like, how do you become a ghostwriter?
I'm a 3-time college dropout, so that's the first step.
Oh, that's the start. Is that the criteria for it right there?
Yes. No one should follow me. I dropped out of college 3 times and took care of the kids. And then when they went to school, I didn't really have any skill. Like, I sold bicycles, and I waited tables at the Huddle House, which is like a Waffle House, but not as fancy.
Not as fancy as a Waffle House. I love it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we did have a deep fry, so we had French fries.
Okay, that's all you need.
Which is nothing. Yeah.
No.
So my husband actually taught me how to write. I'm married to David French, who's a New York Times columnist. At the time that I started sort of learning how to write, he taught at Cornell Law School, and he was a writing instructor. And so he taught me how to write, and that's how I started writing. I started answering ads on Craigslist for $50.
Wow.
I know that you will not be shocked to hear that no one paid me. And then I wrote for the Philadelphia City paper, and then I wrote articles, and only got paid in like free magazines or whatever.
Right.
And then eventually I wrote a book that no one read. And
it's always the first book.
Yeah, there's a great quote by Winston Churchill that says, "I'm the writer of rare books. I just didn't intend them to be rare." So I wrote books, and then we got connected to the Romneys, and I love Mitt and Ann Romney. So I helped Ann on a project that she had, and I loved it. And then later I got a call, and the Palins needed help. So I ended up doing 3 Palin books. So I worked with the Romneys, I worked with the Palins, worked with Ben Sass, worked with, governors, senators, talking heads, pundits, everybody on the Republican side of things.
My goodness. Okay, so there's a lot in there to unpack.
There is.
I just want to know for everybody in the room, what I heard is that she will ghostwrite for people and they don't have to pay her. That's all I heard. I don't know what else she said after that.
She said, you won't be surprised if you get paid.
And I was like, good. Then she won't be surprised if she writes for me and I don't pay her. Yeah, exactly. No, good. There's a lot of good stuff in there. I want to reverse just a little bit because I think it's going to help us even later in the interview a bit. Tell us a little bit about your childhood. Where did you come from, right? Like, what is your who is your group? And again, I think there's just some really interesting stuff that'll help us out even later. Like, tell us kind of where you were born and what that looks like.
Yeah, so my family comes from Montego Mountain in Tennessee, the foothills of the Appalachians. My grandfather was a coal miner. My dad worked in the coal mines, but was a forester. And I grew up mainly in Mayfield, Kentucky, and Paris, Tennessee. So 2 small towns. My parents got off the mountain. But my family, that they were all on the mountain. Right. And so I grew up in the rural South, not hillbillies, although once I have hillbilly blood.
Because you said there's different versions. It's like hillbillies, rednecks, and then something else, and they all have different descriptions of themselves. So you're not claiming hillbillies is what you're saying right now. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say more hillbilly than redneck. But, I grew up in the rural South, and all of that entailed. So I was taught that the Civil War was the war of Northern aggression.
Yes.
I was taught the lost cause stuff. In 7th grade, I did not have science. My teacher decided to teach us about guns. So we did hunter safety, which culminated in a shootout at our school, like a shooting contest. And I don't want to brag, but I was the best shot of my 7th grade class.
Oh, that's right. That's good.
Okay.
That's a big deal.
That's a humble brag.
It needs to be said.
I don't know if it was humble at all. Like, I think it's just a straight up
Usually
brag.
when it says I don't want to brag, right after that.
So, and the reason I bring all of this up is because I am Southern, I'm American, I am Christian. You cannot out Southern me. You cannot out America me. I am a person who grew up going to church 3 times a week.
Right.
Like when people talk about the South, they think of people like me.
Yeah. Now here's another thing. Just because in our show, I smelled it out and heard it. Is when you say I'm American in some ways as I can be, your ethnic heritage is Native American, right? Like it's first generation. Like, talk a little bit about that, because there was a lot about that in your story too that I thought was really interesting.
Yeah. So my grandmother, well, on both sides of the family, we have Indian blood. And I say Indian because that's what everybody down here, and that's how they refer to themselves.
Sure.
Native American is also a name that the white person created to label them, So anyway, but yeah, Cherokee is the lineage that I'm from, and so my grandmother was, let's see, so she was 1/2 Indian. And my grandfather also had a different type of Indian in his family. And so they weren't really proud of it exactly, but they were very interesting. They were very animistic, and they believed in a lot of interesting things. That were foreign to me as a rural Tennessee/Kentucky churchgoer. But just wonderful folks. I love my family so much, and I love the mountain people so much. I just feel like they're beautiful and amazing, and their influence has just shaped me a lot.
See, and so you said that all the things, right? Kind of the Southern, grew up around the talk about Confederacy, Christian, Republican, right?
That's right.
Yeah, and at one point, almost Republican royalty in a sense.
I mean, yes,
talk about that.
At one point, I was standing on the stage of CPAC.
Yeah.
2012, with my entire family being applauded and lauded as the best that Republicans have to offer. My husband, David, had joined the Army after 9/11. He had served in Iraq honorably. He was awarded a Bronze Star. He'd fought for the constitutional rights of Christians and everyone for the past 20 years. He's won every lawsuit that he filed on behalf of these oppressed minority groups. A lot of times those oppressed minority groups were Christian people who were on college campuses and having conflict there. I mean, we literally were as Republican as you could get. And not only did we walk the walk, we talked the talk, we walked the walk.
Yeah.
And people loved us. I remember that moment so well, because everyone was applauding. People were getting teary over how awesome we were. And we would never be invited back, never step foot in CPAC again.
Wow. Okay. Well, talk about that. Like, how do you go from the Appalachians to the Republican royalty, and then in many ways your book articulates a kind of transformation that you kind of went through, right? And even some of the titles give it away of the chapters, like Double Life, right? So why would you not be invited back? What kind of happened in there?
Well, when Trump came down the escalator, I was fine with that. Like I believed that we had other options that were better, obviously. But Trump came down the escalator and it felt like everything sort of changed. I did not think that Republicans would rally around this guy. And the reason why I didn't think they would rally around this guy, because as I mentioned, I was Republican royalty and I thought I knew what Republicans thought. I had so many Republican clients who came to me at all times and they would say, I need an article on my thoughts on immigration. And I didn't say, what are your thoughts on immigration? Because I knew what their thoughts were. Wow. I knew what they should be. And I wrote that. I was like so tuned into my clients that I was a great ghostwriter because they never had to really relay much information to me because I knew what Republicans thought until Donald Trump started mocking John McCain's war service. And when he did that, I was literally at church. I know you should not be scrolling Twitter at church, yet I do.
Heathen.
We can't have her on the show. Let's get her off. We got to cut this off. No.
I know. Lightning strikes. But I read that and I read it out loud to the people around me when we were drinking coffee. And I thought their reaction would be righteous indignation because how dare Mr. Bonespur say that about an American hero. Now, I didn't even, John McCain to me was too liberal. I did not like McCain-Feingold. I did not like his campaign finance reform, but that is within the normal margins of political discourse.
Sure.
This was not mocking somebody's, military record. So I read it to my friends and they laughed and I was completely shook.
Wow. And what I'm interested in is you said kind of the normal margins of political discourse, right? Because, you're writing for these clients, as you said, Republican clients. And in many ways, like, it's expected that they are going to throw some shots across the bow at times, right? Like, they're going to do some stuff with liberals. I think you called it like nut picking or something like that. Like, talk a little bit about so that people understand, like, I mean, you're writing for people, like, is it intentional to be divisive? Like, is that something that is frowned upon, or is it something that's encouraged in the midst of all that? Like, help us let the audience know.
So this is confession. And yes, so I was the person who specialized in helping my Republican clients own the libs. Okay. That is my spiritual gift. I make you drink liberal tears.
Wow.
There's an additional
I like that.
It's something that Paul left out. It was,
is that right. That's the spiritual gift that wasn't in this list?
Yeah,
we'll add it now.
It's the hidden verse.
Not in 1 Corinthians, no. But really, I tell people my spiritual gift was sarcasm, and I could eviscerate people. I just love putting people on skillets. And so doing what I did, which was help my Republican clients score political points, I was really good at that. So I would go to Fox News and I would sit off camera.
Yeah.
And my client would have a thought and I'd say, oh, well, you could say it this way to really drive the knife in. And that's what I did. And also when I would write articles, I did this thing called nut picking, which is if there's a lunatic in Topeka who does something stupid and he happens to be a Democrat, I would write an article and I would say, well, this is how Democrats are.
Wow.
And in actuality, I was breaking the 10 Commandments and I didn't realize it. I was convicted by the Holy Spirit one day when I was saying something about Democrats. Oh, this is the way Democrats are. And it dawned on me, if my liberal counterpart was doing the same thing about some person in Appalachia who did something so dumb, I would be offended. And I would say, how dare you? That's mischaracterizing me. But in actuality, I was bearing false witness against my liberal neighbor. I had no liberal neighbors, but if I had liberal neighbors, I would have borne false witness against them. And I did it as a part of my job. And when I had that realization that, I think this is what happened. I'm 49. I grew up idolizing Ronald Reagan.
Sure.
And he and Tip O'Neill would criticize each other, like in the most dramatic funny ways.
Yeah.
Like, I think he called Tip O'Neill, he was like Pac-Man, a big fat thing that ate up taxes or something, and Tip O'Neill would criticize Reagan as being whatever. But when Reagan was shot, Tip O'Neill was the first person at his bedside, saying the 23rd Psalm. And back then, and I know this is the case because I'm old enough to remember, we criticized each other politically, but we did it with a wink.
Okay.
Like, oh, we're all Americans. After 6 o'clock, we're still friends. We can get a drink together. But before 6 o'clock, we're going to tangle over these issues. And I thought that's what we were doing until I realized that I was actually just being dishonest and cruel and rude. And I decided not to be, which made me about as popular as head lice in the Republican Party and unemployable.
So you haven't, so when did, so you talked about this history of this is how we kind of do it, right? Democrats, Republicans, batting things back and forth. When do you think that changed? Like when, I know obviously you're talking about like, hey, I was just being cruel and these things. But did that start with you? I mean, is there a point in which the rhetoric actually took on a whole nother person?
So I'm not exactly sure when the shift happened. However, I was doing it. So I'm not like you could say it all happened. It all started when Donald Trump came down the escalator, but it was there.
Yeah.
Prior to that, I just didn't realize it. I didn't recognize it, or and honestly, I was a little complicit in it. So I didn't see it. But when Trump came down the escalator and everything was like on, the acrimony was on steroids or cocaine or something, that's when I was like, okay, I see it. I'm sorry. This is not good. But probably some of these elements, the elements I'm talking about is sexism, misogyny, racism, and all of that. I would like to say, honestly, that those things were present in the Republican Party before I realized it.
Yeah.
But those elements are present in the Democratic Party during that same time frame.
Sure.
So, like I did not like President Clinton because he was credibly accused of rape, sexual abuse, and assault by multiple people.
Right.
And I mean, we just saw him trotted out on the DNC stage, like asinine, no reason for that. But I'm not doing both sides here. I'm just telling you that I grew up under this Clinton like vibe, where that was permitted, that was celebrated. At the time, he was the pater familias of the Democratic Party, and I didn't like that either. What I didn't see was it on my own side. And today, I see it on the conservative side, the Republican side, rather, just pretty startlingly in a way that I don't think any American has ever seen before.
Did any of that shake up your faith in politics or your faith in Christianity's connection to politics? And
yes. It shook my faith in politics. I mean, I never really had faith in politics because I'm Southern and distrust the government and everything.
She said she's the Republican of Republicans here. Yeah.
So I'm not really sure. I don't have much hope in politics. And I also, the way that the church has embraced a white nationalist, in my opinion, and Donald Trump, someone who's been credibly accused of rape and held, accountable in a civil court for abuse. The fact that the white evangelical church has embraced him has made me apoplectic and sad and despondent, and I despair, and I'm hanging on to Christianity by my fingernails. I do not have to hang on to the GOP by my fingernails, because good luck to the GOP after this. I'm not a part of that, but I do believe in God and I believe in Jesus. I'm really struggling with like how to fit into the church writ large, because this is a really bad thing that is happening in the white evangelical churches. It's horrific. And I don't know how you can just go to church and be okay with it.
How did you make it okay? Because you talk about Donald Trump comes down the escalator, but you still wrote for people in the space. How did you do that? Because it's not, I mean, we're away from it to some extent now, but I'm sure there's this transition, right? So how did you how did the transition happen, and how were you able to do your job, if you will, in the midst of all that frustration?
Yes. Well, I had one book contract that I had to fulfill after I had my spiritual epiphany. And so I found myself at a Make America Great Again rally as my client spoke and promoted Donald Trump. And I was there. You know, they have all these signs, you know, Hillary is the Antichrist, who killed Vince Foster. People came by the journalist little area and like spat. And I was like, what the heck? And, you know, they were screaming out the whore of Babylon about Hillary Clinton. Wow. And I was like, I do not like Hillary Clinton, but absolutely not. This is lunacy. And then at one point I ended up on Trump's little campaign plane. You know, and I remember the moment where I realized I was occupationally and geographically in the wrong spot when someone came up to me and they were like, hey, do you want to get a picture with Donald Trump for your grandchildren?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm at a Trump rally and my grandchildren will know that.
Wow.
You know, this is not, why am I working? And I felt like that I needed to change as soon as possible. So I finished reading the book. But in the meantime, I had all of these wonderful clients that I loved, these Republican clients, Tea Party, Republicans, all this stuff. And I just gently started pushing back. Like after the John McCain thing, I had a client say, hey, we should write about that. And I was like, yes, we totally should.
She's like, I got stuff to say.
Yeah, how should we condemn this? And they were like, what do you mean? And I was like, no, remember, we love the military. We like American patriotism. We like heroes, courageous heroes who sacrificed a great deal for our nation. That's good. Remember 5 minutes ago when we believed that? And so I would win some battles and then I began to lose battles. I just started losing battles. And you don't really want to battle with me because if you hire me, you just want me to faithfully say what you believe. But I didn't feel like it was like good to do that because I felt like I was helping them lie.
Wow.
And when I was doing that, I was lying and I did not feel that God gave me my writing talent to do that. So eventually they fired me, and they were right to fire me because I was a terrible ghostwriter. I was good, and then I sucked. So they were right to fire me, and I quit a lot of jobs, and I was fired from, I think, maybe one. It's arguable, but
we've all got those jobs back there. Like I probably would have been fired anyway.
Quiet quitting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they were right to fire me. I was probably super annoying because everything they wanted me to write, I would say, have you thought about this? And they started feeling that they were working with the enemy. And even though I love my clients so much, we had to part ways, but you know, I'm a college dropout. I don't have any skills, so it's not like I'm going to go back to the huddle house. I became about.
They'd welcome you there, though.
Yeah, just next to the fryer.
They like, come on in.
Yeah, you start on the floors.
Come on home.
Then you get the salads, and then you get fries, and then management.
All the things.
Yeah.
Oh, you don't ever get a salad at Huddle House.
Oh, that's true.
That's true. I don't know what
they
it
were
is.
So bad. Like you would make them in the little plastic bowls, and you would put cellophane on top of it.
Oh, help us, Lord.
I was not a great waitress, to be honest.
That's
but
fair. You couldn't go back, is what you're saying. They wouldn't have you
go
there.
Back.
Yeah.
No, I can't do that. So let me get this right. So it sounds like if I'm some of our audience and some people who are conservative, who are listening to this and may be triggered a little bit because they're like there may be some triggering, but this is what I think I'm hearing you say. I'm hearing you say you are still a conservative minded American. There's something about the GOP and the way they're presenting themselves now, though, that conflicts with what you understand conservatism to be and with what it means for you to be a Christian in the political space. And you've made some decisions that have just had some really tough consequences. You quit jobs and, as you said, unemployable and all that. Am I wrapping up? That's a very short thing, but am I saying right what I think where you're at? Because you wouldn't say that you're a liberal now,
right?
And you wouldn't say that you're a Democrat, and So anyway, there's this kind of gray area. I don't know if it's even gray, but there's this distinction there that needs to be clear, I guess.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know, like the labels don't work anymore because, you have all these MAGA people saying, well, we're conservative. So I don't want to say I'm conservative because that label is, what does that even mean?
Been hijacked to some extent.
Yeah. And, so like, but for like that's one of the reasons why at the beginning of this interview, I talked about my conservative bona fides. I'm a person. I know how to shoot guns. I know how to properly own guns. I've had 6 different gun classes. I believe in the First Amendment. I believe in the Second Amendment. I'm pro-life. I am a Christian person. But I just feel like if I wrote down all of my things, I would probably have a belief that qualifies under the Republican Party and a belief that qualifies under the Democratic Party. So I'm just not sure what I am, but I know that I haven't changed that much from when I was little. I just think that the Republican Party has changed so significantly that it's baffling. I don't even know the language. It's changed so much. It's left me speechless because I can't even describe myself well.
Yeah, that's hard. I know that there's these tests. I remember every time like elections come, you can kind of take a test and put your stuff in and find out what percentage you are, and so that's kind of what I smell out with you. It's like, I'm kind of like 40% in the Democrat and 60% here, so I'm not really in anything, right? And what I'm really curious about though is, it's about, in some ways, it's like tribalism, right? Like the reason why people ask you that is because they want to know. Are you one of us? Are you one of somebody else, right? And you're sitting there talking to these clients that you're, well known, you're Republican royalty, you're writing these things, and all of a sudden you're challenging. And we know just from, group think started kinds of engagement that as soon as you start questioning the tenets, if you will, of the group, like all of a sudden you lose your membership in a sense. So I'm curious. You would say, when I hear you say, you're going, hey, I didn't move, the Republican Party moved on me, right? So the Republican Party in this moment is moving on you and you're staying here and you sound now like the enemy. How were you treated by those who were moving with the GOP as you stood still?
I love, a lot of things about the South. I love a lot of things about the church. I love a lot of things about being here in Tennessee. But if you do not toe the line, I learned what it meant to be an outsider. So when I grew up in Tennessee, as I mentioned, because of all of the things that I am, all the qualifications that I am that make me one of them, I thought, the South is this wonderful, hospitable place. Everybody is so kind. Everybody is so lovely. I lived in New York for a while and the juxtaposition was significant. But what I learned was I thought everything here was so, daisies and roses was because I was part of the cool kids group.
Right.
And so then when I just was like, hey guys, I don't think we should support Donald Trump. It was like I had I'd changed my last name from French to Pelosi. They were like, indignant, angry. They found me suspicious. They didn't trust me. Because it's hard when you've got a person like me with the qualifications that I have to be listened to by Republicans. You can't out Republican me. You can't. People will say, well, Republicans are patriotic. Okay, well, my husband, who's a lawyer, quit his law practice and joined the Army after 9/11. Yep. So what you got, come at me with something else. Right. And so they'll say, well, I'm this. And on every single criteria, I have chops. But those chops do not mean that I blindly follow whatever the leaders of the GOP hand down to me. In fact, I tell people, and I've always told people, I am too conservative to vote for Donald Trump, and I will not.
Wow. And I think just it's important too, because I can imagine some people are like, oh, my goodness. You know what I mean? She changes this and people don't like her. And now she's just like, these people, they just were really mean and they didn't treat me right. I don't think people understand the 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 way in which you've been engaged or been treated in the midst of this space. When I got to your chapter on the alt wrong, I lost my mind in that chapter on that space.
Right.
There were things that were happening, Richard Sermon, Steve Bannon, right? The alt-right coming in. There's this quote unquote nationalist group, but ultimately revealed themselves in many ways to be a white nationalist group. And so there's these things happening. They engaged you and your family at a particular moment at time, right? Can you tell that story a little bit? I think that may help us as an audience kind of hear, like, in many ways, kind of what it means to be a conservative that goes against the party line where you are right now.
Right. And so, yes, that's a very good point, because all of my family is voting for Trump. My friends are voting for Trump. I love these people.
Yeah.
We hang out. This is not what I'm talking about. I'm
Right.
talking about the most insidious level of criticism. And what they did was they sexualized the criticism. So you go against Donald Trump and you are going to be sexually humiliated. You're going to be racially intimidated. And you're going to be mocked relentlessly for years. And the reason I say that is because whenever we came out against Donald Trump, we also, one data point is that my family includes an immigrant from Ethiopia, a very sweet, beautiful 16-year-old kid who is lovely and amazing, and I love her so much. A lot of America did not share that sentiment. They did not like the fact that we had a daughter who was Black. They said that we were raising the enemy. They called her words that I shan't repeat here, but they would call her every name under the book. They would say that they would take photos of her and Photoshop her into Auschwitz chambers with Donald Trump pulling the lever.
Wow.
At one point, I mean, we were on Caesar Sayoc's bomb FBI, the bomb list.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the FBI came to our house. At one point, there were people who were coming to our house, and they kept messaging us photos of KKK members with the hoods, and then they would send us pictures of road signs getting progressively closer to our house.
Wow.
I mean, like the level of stuff, and then the reason why I say that they sexualize their criticism, I think it's important because it's about the most humiliating thing that you can possibly imagine. To have people say that the reason we have a Black daughter was not through adoption, but was because I had sex with Black men while my husband was deployed. And so it's not even just that, like they literally made videos of me having sex with Black men. I mean, they weren't deep
real,
fake. Yeah. But they would say this, and I just feel like we need to say it. I know this is awful for people listening at home, but I want you to understand the depravity that we're talking about. They said that I had sex with Black men while my husband was deployed. And then they say that is something that we do as a sexual practice. I mean, and this is the type of stuff, like you might say, I disagree with Donald Trump's marginal tax rate. And they're like, yeah, but you have sex with Black men, so why should I listen to you? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the racism of that is so like mind blowing. I don't even know how to process it because I'm relatively new to the thinking about such issues. I mean, to be completely honest, I thought wrongly about these issues before we adopted. And then after we got our daughter, I started seeing everything differently. So that was, so I say that I haven't changed and the GOP, has moved away from me, but there are issues that I've genuinely had a change of heart about as well. But I just wanted to paint the picture of the harassment that has happened to us. And it is perpetual. It lasts for years. It is shocking. Like at one point in 2016, I wrote about being the victim of a pedophile. And from that point forward, very prominent conservatives who write for very prominent magazines would take my anti-Trump political takes and underneath them, they'd say, "Why should we listen to you? You had sex with your preacher." You know, and it's like, if you're siding with the pedophile, it might be time to reevaluate your political passions.
Now, so let's go deeper in on that, right? Because I think this is a good sort of transition for us. First of all, let me just say, like, just as a kind of ending note on what you just expressed, the things you described in the book about the time, about when you found out about the pictures of Naomi, right? The pictures of your daughter, and people were texting you, and then they were sending, you thought, oh, it's this thing that I thought, and like, no, they're sending you other things, right? And then the pictures of you, and the sense of, oh, this black baby came from having sex outside of, you know, that kind of stuff. It took my breath away, right? There were just so many things in there. And then you continue on, right? Like, there's more stories, right? That's what I'm saying. Like, I just had my jaw drop. More stories you talk about in the very beginning of your book around what you were talking about, this sexual abuse by a pedophile, and then the article you wrote. Let us in on a little bit of that, so the audience knows kind of what you're engaging with and how you're looking at that, and then we'll talk a little bit about that again from a GOP standpoint, and then maybe go a little deeper that I'm a little worried to go to piece in. So yeah.
No, I love it. No. So when 2016, when Trump came down the escalator, not only was I really appalled by the fact that he mocked military heroes, he obviously is a sex predator. At the time, we didn't know, like, the court hadn't held him, you know, liable in civil court. Even the Access Hollywood tapes hadn't dropped, but he was a sex predator. I mean, like, there were already credible allegations of predation against him. And I was like, hello, my GOP clients, whom I love, who are also Christian men. Do you remember Dan Quayle talking family values? This ain't it. So I was so aghast that people, men and women, were embracing this person who we now know is a sex predator after 1998, when we all said that Bill Clinton was so immoral that we cannot abide him. 5 minutes later, they're embracing Trump. Absolutely not. So I wanted to write an article about sex abuse. And I had been the victim of a preacher who was a vacation Bible school teacher when I was a kid. And I had never written about it. I hadn't talked about it other than with my close friends. I hadn't even told my therapist about it, but I went and wrote an article I wrote an article just to put it down. Like, okay, why am I so upset about Trump? And I realized I was so upset about Trump because you have people, Christian people, saying, well, yes, he might be a sexual predator, but he's worth it for the following reasons. And in my ears, it was exactly what happened at my hometown congregation, where you had this magnetic personality. Yes, he might have problems, but, you know, he's got all of these good qualities. It was as if they thought that women and children were just an acceptable risk, an acceptable price to pay for beating the Democrats or for beating the Baptist in their church attendance record race or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I wrote an article in 2016, which eventually ended up in the Washington Post, talking about what it was like to be a conservative sex abuse victim when nobody cares about sex abuse victims. And when I wrote that, all HE double hockey sticks broke loose because people were furious at me. And I think they were furious at me because I think it was actually the conviction of the Holy Spirit. They knew that they shouldn't be supporting this guy. And here I am, a conservative, saying that they shouldn't, and they were angry. So like, people online, and I'm not talking about, you know, Patriot, you know, 69 or whatever.
Right.
I'm talking about actual Republican conservative columnists and writers. Whenever I would say anything, they would say, well, you had sex with your preacher.
Wow.
We know that now, so we're not listening to you. And
you lost credibility in the conversation at some capacity with that, is what that's what I'm hearing.
Yes, and it stands to reason. They side with the sexual predators, period. So you cross that, it doesn't matter if you were 12 years old, victimized by a vacation Bible school preacher, you are the problem.
You know, and I'm hearing you right now, and I'm thinking about, and I'm imagining again, and I'm going to say this because I know that there may be people listening. You've had experience with this, right? Like we listened to the first part of this interview, and we're hearing about your Republican space and how you're changing and all these different things, and you're talking about Donald Trump, and there's people who will be like, oh, I can't believe she's talking about Donald Trump, blah blah blah, right? And then there's and then you kind of talk about this idea of being sexually abused and how that aspect of Donald Trump triggers you, and there are people who have and maybe continue to go, oh, she's just triggered by her sexual abuse. It's not that Donald Trump is bad. She's got too much of a skin in the game on this. She's just over emotional. Yeah, she's just over emotional. That's what this is about. She's not really. It's not fully credible because it's just her trauma speaking, right? Have you experienced that before?
Yeah, that's the gist of their criticism against me.
I am so sorry that you've had to engage with that as well. And I know you've turned that, you've taken this sort of passion, if you will. Obviously in the political realm with the current candidate, particularly in the GOP, it's just receipts. Like it's just factual things you're working off of. You're not making up any information. This is stuff that's out there. You're responding to it as somebody who's experienced it in different ways and more viscerally than maybe others who have not. But it's not that you're over responding, right? We should be responding this way when these things happen. And this is what, at least when I was reading your book, it sounds like the church has not done this. And this has led you to even further investigation into things like this for children that you worked on recently. Is that true? Like you can. I'm triggered by this next thing. I just do not need to ask it.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. So, one of the things that bothered me is it just feels like people, like, you were saying, like we should all be equally incensed at abuse. We should all be equally incensed at racism.
Yeah.
And the problem is that we never extend the golden rule. So white people don't care if black people are discriminated against. People who aren't sexual abuse victims don't care if others are victimized. It's just really horrible. But so about 3 years ago, Gretchen Carlson, who used to work at Fox News and brought down Roger Ailes over his sexual misconduct, contacted me and told me that there was a camp in Branson, Missouri called Kanakuk Camps that had an NDA problem, a non-disclosure agreement problem, in that some kids were victimized. They signed NDAs, and the story of the victimization hadn't gotten out. I did not want to touch this. I did not want to say the word pedophilia. I didn't want to know about it. But I, once again, was convicted by the Holy Spirit. As I was saying no, I felt, because I'm a grown woman, if I cannot deal with this discomfort of dealing with this topic, then I really need to check myself. And when I was a kid, the grown-ups around me knew about the abuse and they did nothing. And so here I was in the same exact position. I was a grown-up. I know about abuse. What am I going to do? And so I quit my jobs. I mean, I already confessed I didn't have that many jobs.
But I quit nonetheless.
It didn't take very long.
Yeah. No, I mean, but I do think that God maybe fortuitously arranged that, the fact that I was about as popular as head lice with the Republican Party actually meant I had some free time. And so I went to the New York Times, I went to the Washington Post, I went to Christianity Today, and I said, hey, there's this really weird camp. Well, I shouldn't say it's a weird camp. It's very mainstream evangelical Christian camp.
Yep.
But there's a camp in Missouri that has this big sexual abuse problem. Can you help me investigate it? Or would you like to investigate it? Because I didn't want to do anything on it. But nobody would. And so I don't have a journalism degree or any degree, but I just decided I had to do it. So I taught myself how to be an investigative journalist. I Googled, what does off the record mean? Apparently there's a lot of strata to off the record. I had no idea. And so I just started doing the investigation. It took me 3 years. I almost didn't get it published because nobody really cared. And finally, I did probably a series of 8 articles, most of which were published at the Dispatch, which is where my husband worked. If I didn't have that contact, I would never have gotten that published. Eventually, I got it in USA Today. So it got exposure. Everybody knows about it. But what I found about this camp in Branson, Missouri, Kanakuk camps, is that they not only have a history of sexual abuse, they currently are lying about sex abuse. They currently have a terrible child protection plan that allows pedophiles to even be on the property. I have a photo of this. This is not made up. Over the course of my investigation, I proved everything that I wanted to prove and much more. I've only published about 3% of what I know, but what I know is this: the camp is full, historically, of very bad people who take advantage of children. And I'm not talking about slight taking advantage. I'm talking about one predator, for example, who he has abused an estimated hundreds of male campers. And I'm talking rape and sodomy and all of that terrible stuff. Forgive me, listeners. And he actually was caught, is serving 2 lifetime sentences plus 30 years. But the people who allowed that to happen, Joe White, who's the CEO, and the other leadership, they knew about abusive behavior for 10 years and allowed it to happen because they viewed that predator as important enough to keep around.
So this is where I kind of lost it in your book for me, because I worked at Kanakuk for 4 summers from 96 to 2000, and although I've seen the report of what you've done so far, when you were unpacking, I mean the amount in the midst of this book, and as you say, you know, like, this was going on while I was there.
Yes.
Right. Like this is while I was there, and nobody knew, or maybe some people knew, nobody saw it, you know, those kind of things. Maybe people saw it. I never saw it. I was in programs. I was, you know, creating stuff and whatnot. And Joe White, like, I have his phone number, right? Like, he wrote a recommendation for me when I was looking to go to seminary, right? Like, I worked very closely with him. I've been to his house. I've eaten his food, right? Like, we've, and it just broke me. It broke my heart. And I know that people are still sending their kids there.
Yes.
They're still doing it.
There was a hashtag, I know and still go.
See?
That's wild.
Well, and you have people like Michael W. Smith.
Oh yeah, I knew Smitty, right? Like, this, he'd come every year. He wrote the song. He'd come. We'd have to sneak him in and do Stephen Curtis Chapman and DC Talk, and like all the crew wrote Lecrae. Like, they all rolled through, and and
they didn't just roll through at the time.
Yeah.
Let the record show.
Yeah.
Since I have published these articles, some of these people still send their kids, still go and do concerts, and still promote the camp. It is shocking and reprehensible that after I proved everything that I wanted to prove, that there was not collective outrage from the church. Instead, there was a gigantic collective shrug. And that's what I will never get over.
I have a question, because you've been talking about this. You started off talking about how the Republican Party is turning the blind eye. But I think the interesting thing for me is, as you're talking about this, is everything you were talking about the blind eye earlier. It's not just politics. Like, you're showing us now, like, it's the church that's turning the blind eye as well. I guess I'm curious, in the stories that you've been sharing through all of this, like, you're talking about the people that are making up stories about you, about your children. Like, that's not just politicians. That's not just journalists. Like, that's people who claim the name of Jesus who are attacking you. Is that accurate?
Yes, Kevin Schmevin, that is exactly right. I have been maligned so much, and I feel like I'm whining a bit on this, and I will probably continue to whine. But, you know, the thing that really upsets me is that I have never been to Branson, Missouri, like you. I have never spoken to Joe White. I tried to Matthew 18 it. Is that the right scripture where you go?
Go talk to your brother. Yeah.
Yeah, I tried to do that and he wouldn't speak to me. If he had spoken to me, maybe we could have ironed out some things, but probably not, because the facts are the facts. This abuse happened. The abuse is being lied about to this day. Same people who oversaw the abuse are still there. No one has been fired. No one resigned. But my biggest obstacle, y'all will laugh at this, was not my lack of investigative skills or anything like that. What I had to overcome was because I'd already written that 2016 piece against Donald Trump.
Yeah.
People would Google me and they wouldn't speak to me because I wasn't part of the tribe. And I'm as part of the tribe as you could possibly be. I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm not trying to protect my kids. I don't send my kids to Branson, Missouri. I'm talking about your kids.
Right.
And you won't listen to me because I won't support a sex predator on the topic of sexual predation. Many times I talked to parents who mocked me and wouldn't listen to me because I didn't support Donald Trump when I knew their kids were victims. They didn't know their kids were victims, and I didn't feel like it was my part to tell them. But I would just lovingly say, you should pay attention to this topic.
Yeah.
You know, this is a big deal, and they don't even know their own kids are being abused. And that happened multiple times.
I can appreciate, Kevin, you bringing up the piece, because a lot of what we're wrestling through on our podcast is where the Christian voice is in all of this stuff that we're talking about. And you heard at the beginning, it's Christianity, culture, and race. And so, like, this conversation has talked about so far, touched on all those things, not just the political part, but all the rest of it, and how the Christian voice and witness is being affected by its connection to these political branding, I guess is what I would say, of the GOP, and the connectedness to that being the values party and the Jesus party. And then there's a series of inconsistencies that people see, and they have to wrestle with that. And the loss there is not just it's the loss of the Christian influence, and it's the damage of people, because it turns out that Jesus has a like really great way to live. And so, like, if we don't protect and exemplify or model that, even in our in the quote unquote Jesus party, then people will get hurt. People will get, these things are going to happen. Racism will have places to incubate, and tribalism or loyalty will overshadow kingdom virtue. And it's a sad thing. A part of this conversation is, for me, not so much about whether I am going to vote right or left. It is more like the conversation is, we've got to figure out how the Christian witness properly affects what we're thinking about, and we got to be brave enough to follow Jesus into the way we would deal with political discourse, even when it means, going against the grain, because it matters, because people's lives are shaken up as a result of it. It's so much more than who you're going to vote for. It is children. It is livelihoods. It is spiritual. I hesitate to say spiritual warfare, but in some ways, a different kind of spiritual warfare than the way that GOP typically would, or the Christian would typically frame it. Yeah. And so I think that's just a really, it could be really, just saying the word Trump will be distractive to a lot of people listening. And what they will take away from this conversation is color commentary wants us not to vote for Trump, or Nancy French doesn't want us to vote for Trump. Man, that might be true. I don't know what I don't think she's
been very clear.
True.
Yeah, she's been very clear. She's very clear.
Yeah,
about that.
Nancy's very clear.
Yeah.
But I would hope that as we should interrogate the scripture says that judgment comes to the house of God first, right? In 1 Corinthians 5 or 1 Corinthians 6, one of them. And this look inward to say, how are we navigating the grace we've been given, the command to love like Jesus? Well, are we navigating that in the political square? Your story is a lot of the consequences of us mishandling that and doing that badly. And we have to be able to look at that honestly
as an actual true story.
Right. And the reason the Republican Party is in the crosshair of the conversation is because the Republican Party are wearing the Jesus t-shirts.
Right.
So when they wear that, if you're a believer, then you're saying, hey, I am paying more attention to what you're doing and saying because you are supposed to be representing Christ and ergo me.
Right.
And when that doesn't align, yes, I expect the people who aren't wearing Christian t-shirts, the Jesus t-shirts, to behave in whatever way they behave.
Right.
Those who are wearing the t-shirt, it does matter. So that makes the Republican Party, for me as a believer, something to look closer at and to be more more critical of and more evaluative about. And yeah, that does mean that my problems are going to probably show up with that party. That doesn't necessarily mean that I've left the whole thing. It just means that we have to be willing to do that. And I just want to lay that bed there for this conversation, because it will be easy for those who are, and this is going to happen anyway, for those who are on the edges.
Sure.
They're going to be like, hey, I can't believe they turned political. The point for me is we've got to look at how we're doing. And Nancy, what you're revealing to me is Christians, man, we have made some mistakes and there are some major consequences, and it's deeper than we think it is.
Yeah.
And we need to look at it.
We go to church and we learn how to be a good Christian businessman or how to be a good Christian mother, but we never learn how to be a Christian citizen.
Yeah.
So we should have a conversation about that. However, I mean, just to go along with the theme, like we've been members of the Presbyterian Church of America for 15 years. And when David French, my husband, who writes for the New York Times, was invited to their General Assembly to talk about how to navigate this difficult political moment with kindness, they canceled him. And in the most nationally humiliating way possible, our critics were saying asinine, inaccurate, easily provably false accusations against David, including but not limited to the fact that he believes in child castration, that he's pro-choice, that he's not for traditional marriage, just stuff like that. Now, what I would say is he doesn't hide his political positions under the flower pot next to the spare key in our front yard. You could Google him. The PCA, which I loved, my denomination, uninvited him and said they did not realize how problematic David French was. And it's just like, okay, there is a problem here, but it's not with David French. It might do with reading comprehension, but I think it's probably because they valued the tribe members that were raising all the ruckus, that were bringing the accusations against him. They valued that more than they valued us, because we were not, they just didn't like the people, because if David French had the exact same positions on everything, but he supported Trump, we would have been carried in on a freaking litter. But because he opposed Trump, we got uninvited from the denomination that we've been a part of for 15 years. And so that's the white evangelical church. And when I say the church, I mean the white evangelical church, because they don't see the black evangelical church is not storming the Capitol. And that's why I differentiate. But it doesn't mean I don't love the church. I love the church enough to speak out honestly about this. And I think we all should.
Yeah, I think that's a great transition to kind of wrap it up to some extent, because I think there's a particular story that I'm thinking of that you can tell to kind of help people see what you're talking about here, right? I do think that there is a wonder. I wonder if people are like, oh my gosh, she's not talking to anybody on the other side. If they're voting for Trump, she's out on them, right? You've already said that you've got family members and people close to you that you engage,
right?
But you've been attacked in some ways by. I'm thinking of a story that Antwuan told me. You might have said it at the conference that he saw you at. And maybe Antwuan, you can help us.
Yeah, I was really touched by the story around pro-life with your husband and your new friend that you kind of gained from that. You probably don't have a ton of time. You spent a lot of time sharing that story, and it was a fun video that tells that story as well that I thought was really heartbreaking. But it could be a really nice way to end it. I love that you started with, "Hey, I have a lot of Trump loving friends," and just saying, and you being someone who isn't in that camp, how those relationships are held together, and how it can be, and this story is a great example of how you could be politically opposite and yet not see each other as enemies. So if you would be willing to share just a little bit of that story, maybe sum it up, I think it'd be really great for our hearers.
In 2016, when I wrote the article against Donald Trump, being very vulnerable about my sexual abuse, the reaction was so acrimonious from the political side, the conservative side, that I just decided, forget it. I'm following Democrats. If anybody is nice to me, I'm following them on Twitter. And so I sort of expanded my universe ideologically of the people that I followed. One person was named Kathy Kattenberg. She did not have a profile picture. She had an image that said something about immigrants. And she was as liberal as Ted Kennedy, maybe more. She's had 4 abortions, which she talked about constantly. Though she was really nice to me after the article, I noticed that for 2 years after that, she just constantly harassed my husband. David French does not, he mutes, he blocks, he never heard it. But Kathy every day was like, David French, why don't you not talk about anti-Semitism because you don't know what you're talking about? Or David French is a racist, or David French, you hate women, or David French, it was like incredibly uncharitable, inaccurate, and constant. Then when COVID hit, she posted something that made me reach out to her. She said, I don't have food and I'll never be able to get these groceries delivered. And I made a vow a long time ago, if I ever sensed that someone was actually in danger, that I would try to help them, which has landed me in some crazy situations. But when I saw that, I reached out to Kathy Kattenberg, who may or may not have been a real person. And I said, hey, Kathy, this is Nancy French, David's wife. Do you have food? Are you food insecure? And she said, okay, well, I just need to talk to you on the phone. And I was like, oh my gosh, is this 1993? Who does that? So she called me on the phone and I was so not happy about it.
She wanted to page you on your beeper.
911.
All right. But I heard her accent and it was this beautiful New York accent. And I sound like I fell off of the, turnip truck. And we had this conversation and she said, I have no food. She had not eaten anything but pancake mix for 2 weeks. She was disabled and she was a hermit that lived in New York. And then here I am calling her and she was like, why did you call me? And I was like, I don't know, Kathy, Jesus. Like I don't really want to call, I didn't even want to call her. I just felt like this was a spiritual obligation. And she's Jewish and she was like, okay, Jesus, fine. And I called a million different churches, synagogues. Nobody could help. I thought I was going to have to drive to New York to see Kathy and deliver canned goods. But every day we talked on the phone and she said, oh, I love all these chimichangas, or I love this. And so I was making these grocery lists. I did an order on Amazon. I did one on Whole Foods. I did one on Instacart. I did them everywhere. None of them came. She got hungrier and hungrier. And finally, I was like, Kathy, I don't know what to do. I'm so sorry. I guess the only thing left to do is pray. And that's the kind of thing that I say, and I don't really mean it. And I don't want anyone to call me on it.
All right.
But she was like, okay, pray. And I was like, oh my gosh, because I actually do not like to pray with people. I'm one of those. And I also didn't know how to pray with a Jew because I thought maybe I'd do it wrong and offend her. And I said, Kathy, I don't know how to pray with Jews. And she was like, just do it. I don't care if you do it in Jesus' name, but I need some food.
I'll take anything you got.
So on the phone, Kathy Kattenberg and I prayed. And within 6 hours, she'd gotten 2 or 3 deliveries of food. She got 24 bananas, 6 pounds of beef. It was like she was so rich with food. Yeah. And Kathy and I became good friends. And I love her so much. We talk on the phone all the time. We talked about politics. She's told me all about her abortions. I've told her why I'm pro-life. I love her so much. We have been friends now for several years. Sometimes we even watch sermons together online just so she can critique them. We read books together. And I love Kathy Kattenberg. She hasn't budged 1 inch politically, but I definitely can say that I have a beautiful friend in New York that I otherwise would not have known if I had not been able to overcome our political differences.
Yeah,
that is.
I think David had initially written his position on
abortion,
which she was reading and, like you said, responding to vehemently.
Sure.
And anyway, I just.
But do you know who loves David French almost as much as me? Kathy Kattenberg. She loves him. I mean, like when I do moth storytelling, and once I was at Lincoln Center and I called Kathy and said, if you could, I was like, I know you're disabled, but does your butt work? Can you sit in a seat? If I can pick you up and with a car and get you there.
Yeah.
And she agreed. And I was so happy to have her in the audience. But because I was backstage, I said, Kathy, the only problem is the person getting you out of your Uber is David. That's what happened. He got her out. He held her arm. He escorted her inside. She sat with my family, and she is a part of my family.
See, I love this. And I think it's a great way for us, particularly in the work that we do with this reconciliation ministry, particularly across the church aspects, but we're not even dealing even with the church aspect in this story, but it's this recognition, right? Like, I know that there's people out there who we got lots of folks there's going to be folks who like talking about Trump. But what we just saw is a work in which these two people on opposite sides politically as far as how they may brand themselves to some extent. I know, Nancy, you're like, I'm kind of in this in between, but you've got a lot of things and beliefs, values that are attached to conservatism, attached to republicanism, that I know people who are listening are going, oh, well, I don't want to like her because she doesn't like Trump, but I am with her on this pro-life thing. How do I do this with her? How do I like? You can actually like her. You can have all those things in your body, right? Because it's not, our identity is not republicanism. Our identity is in Christ, and this is the way in which Nancy is functioning and wanting to do that. But she's able to create this relationship with people who have completely different ideas, and I think that's
and adamant in those ideas. Like,
they haven't moved. They're not even moving.
Passive. Like,
aggressively.
Well, I kind of it matters deeply.
Yes, and it's just a beautiful example of how living the fruits of the Spirit, really.
Yeah.
With any human that you come in contact, even the enemy, right? This is Jesus's. Love your enemy, pray for those who persecute you. You literally did those things. Like, you loved your enemy and you brought food, and then when the food wasn't coming, you prayed for her. She's been persecuting your husband. And look what God did in the midst of it. Imagine.
Not just food, but relationship,
friendship, experiences. I mean, I know you're growing because you're engaging with her too. It's just a beautiful piece.
Yeah.
And
I think we need to remember that Jesus' squad of 12 included Matthew, the tax collector, and Simon the Zealot.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And those were political factions.
Absolutely.
They literally killed each other. If they can get along, and they could, because their identity was in Jesus and not in their identities.
Yeah.
If they can get along, we can.
Yeah. Yeah. And what I don't want to take away from anything that you said is you mentioned, and I love it, that you love the church and therefore you're going to tell the truth about what you see. When I heard that, it reminded me of James Baldwin's quote where he says, I love America more than any other country in the world. And exactly for this reason, I insist on the right to criticize her perpetually.
Right.
I hear in your story, I love the church, right? More than I'm continually in love with Jesus and desire to love the church more than anything in the world. It's harder these days. Yeah. But I love it, and I believe that the church is an entity that can be very powerful. And so for that reason, I am going to call her out in places and times where she's not exhibiting that. And if we are attaching ourselves to either party and saying this party will solve, you said this earlier, that this party will solve our problems, that we need a hero from one of these two parties to solve our problem. If we are doing that, attaching our identity to that, that is wrong. Whether that's not helpful for the church, it's not kingdom mentality, whether it's for the Republicans or the Democrats. If you're doing that, that is an affront to the identity that we have as these ambassadors in the midst of a place. And what we're lamenting, and we did in the last episode of this too, we lament that the church has attached themselves, or at least from the outside, it looks like the church is attached to one party. And that party is doing what only it can do, which is fail in representing Jesus.
Right.
You just can't do it. Like you're just not going to find it. So, man, Nancy, this has been great. Super excited for our listeners to hear this. So grateful for your vulnerability in writing the book, but also I know you have to kind of relive these things in the interviews, and you have to keep kind of talking about it so other people can hear it. So I really appreciate your vulnerability and engaging with us in this conversation today. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been so fun.
Absolutely. We've loved it. Again, there's so much more in the midst of it. If you have not engaged with Nancy and engaged with her videos and her books, I want to encourage you to do that, right? The book that we've kind of been circling around is this one called Ghosted, An American Story, but I know you also have a collab out there called After Party that I'm excited to read.
Love the title.
Yeah, it's a great title. I was prepping for the Ghosted piece, so I'm like, oh, now I'm ready to get to the After Party. So those of you listening, if you want to know more about Nancy, definitely check that out. Nancy, any other socials? We'll throw some stuff out as far as our social engagement as well, but anything we need to know about that they can get connected to right now with you?
Yeah, if you go to nancyfrench.com, you can read a lot of my investigative journalism. You can see my books, and you can see how to connect with me. You can also email me if you are incensed or inspired by whatever happened on this program. I would love to hear from you. And I just want to encourage everyone to have hope, because our hope is not in the political system or in this world.
That's right. And if you're hungry out there, I would recommend you email her as well, because who knows, she might show up with some food at your house.
She might order you
24 bananas.
some Instacart. If you need 24 bananas to
That's
show
right.
up at your
Just
house.
exactly. If you got company, a company of monkeys coming to your house, and you need some bananas, you're ready to go. You're ready
all
to
the bananas.
Man, hey, this has been Color Commentary, colorful conversations by colorful people about Christianity, culture, and race. Excited that we had Nancy in the studio today. Thank you again, Nancy, for being here. Thank you to, I'll go around and get to you. Thank you, Chino. I know you've been kind of writing stuff over there. She's like, oh, I can't wait to cut this piece and put it out on social media. I love it. Yes, and Shmevin in the booth there, jumping in for just a little bit on there, and Antwuan always coming in here. And thank you for introducing us, even to Nancy, for this engagement. And obviously, thank you to you listeners who are out there. We're so excited that you're in. Again, this podcast is powered by Threaded, a biblical racial reconciliation, unity, justice ministry. We want you to be a part of that. You want to check us out, find out more about who we are, you can go to wearethreaded.org. And if you're looking for more ways to just start, right, that's a good educational piece and potential to subscribe, to be reminded. But if you want to find out more ways to just start with us, you can go to wearethreaded.org/just-start, and that'll help you start in this conversation in very easy ways, and then help you guide along. We will help guide you along the way to even more and more steps. Right. So thank you again for coming to Color Commentary. This is an opportunity for us to be able to show you different perspectives, different lenses that you can see life through. And because of that, we always tell you at the end of the show that you should stay colored.